Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I am your host, Richie. On tonight's show, we're going to speak on one of the more unpredictable divisions in the NFL. Of course, I'm talking about the NFC South. We have two Super Bowl champions in this division, former champions. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers did it twice, 2002 as well as 2020. The New Orleans Saints won their lone Super Bowl back in the 2009 season over Peyton Manning's Colts. The Atlanta Falcons have lost two Super Bowls, once to the Denver Broncos, and most recently to the New England Patriots in the biggest blown lead in Super Bowl history. Steve Smith Sr. and Jake Delhomme led the Carolina Panthers way back in 2003, against Tom Brady's New England Patriots. That was a nail-biter, which saw Adam Vinatieri do what he does in Super Bowls, and that's kick the Patriots to victory. The Bucs are actually three-time defending champions in this division. So I think it's safe to say that we expect this division to be relatively competitive this year. There are, similar to the NFC East, there are a lot of metrics in this division that lead people to believe that it could be very close yet again. Last year, just a game separating the division champions. Actually, it was a tiebreaker. The New Orleans Saints missed because of a tiebreaker with the Tampa Bay Bucs. We'll be right back to give you the goods on this division. Enjoy this intro, and I'll be right back. All right, we are live, Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast, talking about the NFC South. With me tonight, my two co-hosts, Window 2, Mr. Idris Salam, a.k.a. Bosco from the Bronx. Sir. We have my man, Mr. Mike Zappi, out in San Antonio, Texas.
You know, and it's funny you say unpredictable because that was well on display when the Atlanta Falcons did the unpredictable thing and took a quarterback at number 8 instead of a defensive player, you know? So I'm excited about this division. I'm going to chew this division up.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about this division, and it's not always the most positive stuff because there has been a lot of mediocrity floating around this division, if not just literally the bottom of the barrel in terms of poor play. But as we always do, we start from the bottom and move it on up. Carolina Panthers. Idris is familiar with these guys. They play rather close to where Idris lives. Last year, an NFL worst 2-15. Key additions via the draft. Wide receiver Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. Running back Jonathan Brooks, one of the better running backs in this draft, out of Texas. Trevin Wallace from Kentucky. Jatavian Sanders from Texas. Charles Smith-Wade, Washington State. Defensive lineman Jaden Crumedy, Mississippi State. Linebacker Michael Barrett out of the national champion Michigan Wolverine program. Key additions, they got a second and a fifth for the trade with our New York Giants, Idris and I, for the services of Brian Burns. Via free agency, NFL veteran Jadeveon Clowney, former number 1 pick Wide receiver Deontay Johnson. Guard Robert Hunt. Guard Damian Lewis. Offensive tackle Yash Nijman. Defensive tackle, former Giant, most recently Ashawn Robinson. Josie Jewell. Cornerback Dane Jackson. Long snapper J.J. Jensen. And running back Raheem Blackshear. Both were re-signed. Some of the key losses, Hayden Hurst is a Charger. Bradley Bozeman also joining him out in L.A. Defensive lineman Deshaun Williams is a Bill. Yetur Gross-Matos, the edge rusher, is a 49er. Camus Grugier-Hill is a Viking. Frankie Louvu is a Commander. And Von Bell is a Cincinnati Bengal. Jeremy Chin is a Commander. It's hard to think that this team could be worse than they were a year ago, boys. I look for bright spots whenever you talk about bad programs. Bryce Young, it's either this year or I like the Jonathan Brooks draft pick. Adam Thielen last year had a wonderful season, but it's because he had nobody else to throw to. They lost Brian Burns, their best defensive player.
They didn't lose him. They traded him.
They did trade him, and in my opinion, I think that was a very good trade for the New York Giants. They're bad, but how bad? But how bad?
This is how bad I think they are. I'm just going to get it out there. First of all, this is a team that is looking back on the decision last year to trade up with the Chicago Bears to number 1 to go out there and get Bryce Young. Horrible. I mean, I thought that the game against UT last year when Alabama had to go to play against UT, I'm sorry, from 2 years ago, he did not look like an NFL quarterback. You know, obviously when you have great receivers around you, it's easy to tote the ball down, go see film on Mac Jones. But then you fast forward to this year, they had the opportunity where they could have got, I'll say Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. They could have been in that position to get one of those guys, but instead they're stuck now with Bryce Young. And when I look at a schedule and you say, can they get any worse? They shouldn't be any worse. And I say, pump the brakes. I think they could be worse than what they were last year. Yes, you bring in a couple of guys. I think the addition of Deontay Johnson, especially for fantasy owners out there, I think he's a receiver you can go out and get, especially for a wide receiver too. But, you look at Jonathan Brooks, he's not going to be ready for the first quarter of the season because he's coming off of that torn ACL. Jatavian Sanders, great tight end, great blocking tight end, can also split him outside into the slot, whichever. But this Carolina team, what is their identity right now? I don't know what their identity is. I don't think they know what their identity is.
Miles Sanders is going to be back. I imagine.
No, Miles Sanders is gone.
Miles Sanders is gone as well?
He's gone.
Yep.
Yeah, their running back is Chuba Hubbard with Jonathan Brooks as a backup. I thought Miles Sanders, maybe Miles is back actually.
I thought he was gone.
Either way, like they invested in Miles Sanders last year and he didn't do anything for that team. Do you have a receiving core of Deontay Johnson?
He's still a Panther.
Thielen.
Okay.
He's still a Panther. Okay. And then, so they have the receiving core of Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, and Marcavius Jonathan Mingo. And then you have Xavier Leggett, a guy that I'm actually very high on, Mr. Southern Talk himself. But this Panthers team, what do they have? What excites you? When I look at the schedule, I literally see one game on their schedule that they can win, and that's going to Denver. That's how bad it is. Because they might be able to beat the Saints, because when I look at the NFC South, I look at it this way for this year, at least in my opinion. There's two teams that are going to be competing for the division, and there's two teams that are going to be competing for a top 5 pick, that being the Saints and the Panthers. It's hard to repeat what you did the year before. In most cases, you do better.
Well, it's usually hard if we're talking about excellence.
Excellent, yes. But when I look at this team's schedule, the fact that, they do have to play the AFC West, the AFC West. They do have to play the NFC East. I don't think there's an easy game for them, with the exception of Denver and New Orleans at home. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to be able to pull out a game somewhere else in there, and they're going to be a 3-win team this year. Will be in the top 3 NFL draft pick in 2025, and they're going to be asking themselves, is Bryce Young our quarterback of the future, or are we looking at guys like Carson Beck? Are we looking at Shedeur Sanders, or are we going to try to go get a defensive player like the defensive end out of LSU to kind of rebuild that defense? Because right now I look at this team and I just don't see anything whatsoever.
I'm close. 2-15. I got them winning that Bronco game as well because I think the Broncos are really going to stink too. And maybe they split with Atlanta just because they always do. But God,
it's bad.
They're so bad. Idris, by the way, before we go any further, this hat, Idris, straight from the Nino Brown collection.
I like it.
I do too.
Like it. I like that hat. I think we could spend the next 12 minutes talking about the hat.
The hat
and find a lot more positive things than the Panthers.
Hey man, that's the way it is, man. As for the NFC South, I'm with you guys, man. I say 3 wins, 3-14. I think they'll beat Denver, but I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm more like 2-15. I'll be honest with you. I think they'll get one from Atlanta, and I think somewhere along the line they'll maybe slip one. They'll beat New Orleans one time.
New Orleans could be a team they beat. I don't like their own.
I see a split with Atlanta because they said they usually do. They play Atlanta tough regardless, and the same with New Orleans. I see they could split with New Orleans, but like with Bryce Young, and I've said this about Alabama quarterbacks, Ohio State quarterbacks until C.J. Stroud. All these quarterbacks come to these Power 5 schools, Alabama, Oklahoma, I say they are not NFL quarterbacks. You put a bunch of people around them, they look great. Look at the history of Alabama quarterbacks, man. Joe Namath came from Alabama, but was he really that good? He was that.
He was good. I think he was good for the era.
To be good.
Yeah. Good for the era.
He needed to be good. But you look at that long list in between. I mean, like Tua maybe. But you got to put the right people around him. Jalen Hurts, I'm going to make a lot of Eagles fans mad, but I don't think he's that good. I think he's a quarterback, and we'll talk about one of them. I think he's a quarterback who they put the right people around him. They put everything around him to succeed. And, he's not better than Dak. I'll say that. I hate the Cowboy, but he's not better than Dak. Okay. But anyway, 2-15, 3-14 at the max. I don't see them getting better. Yeah, they picked up Clowney, but Clowney was another guy I said he's a bust. They made a big deal. That big hit he had versus Michigan. Oh, they didn't come. I said that guy's a bust. He's a bust.
It's for a fact when you look at this team, you had we'll rewind it back to 2023, number 1 pick in the NFL draft. You traded away the farm, King's ransom to get up to number 1, and you get Bryce Young. And while there was a lot of hate going towards C.J. Stroud because of where he came from, Ohio State quarterbacks, no success, I was still higher on C.J. Stroud than I was on Bryce Young, and I think most people were too. Yeah. But, they traded up, and they could have easily still sat where they were at number 10 last year, took themselves a good offensive lineman or a defensive player, got in a Jahmyr Gibbs, whatever the case may be, probably would have still been number 1 and been able to get themselves a much better quarterback this year, or if not, Marvin Harrison or Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. But no, instead, this is a team that it's not often that you're 2-15 and you don't have your first-round pick. And that's the part that's going to hurt the team.
Something exactly the thing about that is the year prior, they did pretty good with Sam Darnold. The last few games, the last 6-7 games of the season, they did damn good.
They started off the year 3-0.
Yeah.
Once
Steve Wilkes took over, we think we got it going on. They took a big step back when they fired Wilkes. They bought in what's his name, and then they drafted Bryce
Frank Wright.
Frank Wright
halfway through the season. Frank Wright. I'm like, so what did y'all do? Y'all didn't do anything.
And then they had that little weird period where you mentioned Sam Darnold a couple of years ago. Baker Mayfield was also on that team.
Yeah,
most of us had Baker dead to rights.
Yeah,
and I think that goes to show
Baker Mayfield.
And I think the biggest problem with this team is not so much player personnel; it's more the people above that are making the decisions. Because we're talking about Baker Mayfield, who rejuvenated his career in this exact same division,
right?
And
guy that Cleveland quit on him after the Carolina debacle. I think we all agreed that it was probably the beginning of the end for Baker.
Yeah.
But something, the owner, he people talk about how Jerry is, but Jerry's medicine, but he'll put the people out. He'll draft the people you need. He just
and
don't
he'll
mind
sign the players he needs to sign. He's just
right,
loves to be in front of the camera.
But see, with Carolina, no one here likes the owner. No one here likes the owner. I'm not even a Carolina fan. I don't like it.
There's that is a prime example of, when I think of the Carolina Panthers, obviously they're one of the newer NFL teams. But when I think of the Panthers, I think of the Oakland Athletics, a team that has down the gutter because of who owns them.
And they had a decent amount of success for a newer team. They came in the same year as Jacksonville, made the NFC title game in their second year of existence.
13-3, their second year.
Made the Super Bowl.
Yep.
In the early 2000s, lost the Classic to New England. Most recently, a game that I think they have not, as an organization, recovered from, which was the famous Von Miller Cam Newton game. Peyton Manning's final game.
Yeah, they dismantled the team.
They did not recover since then. Cam Newton's career went down to shit after that. The organization in general just took a nosedive after that Super Bowl.
Yeah, they dismantled the team. They got a bad history with coaches, and like Steve Wilkes. And I'm not tooting for Steve Wilkes because he's black, but God, he changed the culture, man. When they fired,
that's the word right there.
Fire him.
Very disappointing that they didn't retain him.
And like I said, I say this is a team trying to find an identity. That's a better word to use. They're trying to find a culture there. They're trying to find something. And if they don't figure this out soon, we're going to be talking about the Carolina Panthers possibly being chased out of that city. That's what
dude, you're talking about even with the King's ransom, so to speak, with the whole Bryce Young deal. That will go down as one of the worst trades since the Minnesota Vikings gave up the farm and expedited the Dallas dynasty.
And you know what's funny? It's going to go down even worse if Caleb Williams ends up being a Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah. It just continues. It just continues.
Throwing a DJ Moore.
Yeah, it just continues to get worse and worse. I mean, dude, this organization has had some good moments, but most of it has not been the best. Cam Newton, MVP season, we know what happened there. Kerry Collins had the alcoholism issues, comes to New York, takes them to a Super Bowl.
Yep.
Steve Smith Sr. had enough of this organization, and he goes with Baltimore. It's just, oh, God, it's bad.
Brian Burns is probably saying.
Yeah, and that's what, and I was going to say, you look at a guy like Brian Burns who was traded away, where, he only had 8 sacks last year, 12 and a half the year before. He's only had 1 year of double-digit sacks, but he's still a centerpiece that you build a defense around. And they traded him away to the Giants. And the crazy part is, what did you guys have to give up again?
A second and a fifth. That wasn't painful.
Say that again?
A second and a fifth. That wasn't that painful.
That is the perfect example of ownership doing the team wrong instead of doing right by those. And
I'm looking forward to that addition for our defense because of the fact that when you look at the defenses this team has put out in recent years, he really was a one-man show. And I think that his numbers should be through the ceiling no matter what kind of year the Giants have. You got Kayvon opposite, you got Dexy in the middle. That is the strong part of the Giants roster right now. But the point to be made is this is a dude that was playing at a supreme level considering he had no help around him.
Yeah. It's bad. Look, I said 3-14. I'm gonna take a mulligan on this one.
I'm going
1-16.
2-15 for me, 1-16 for you. Idris, what is your final thought on this horrific organization?
2-15.
And to the only Carolina Panther I really know, fan-wise, my cousin Mariano Cruz out in Long Island. He's actually in Texas now. Or he was in Texas. An original Panther fan. The second that this team got Kevin Green and Greg Lloyd, he was on them from that moment. So I respect that. But my God, Mario, your team is – I guess you could say a Steelers sympathizer.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people were watching that defense back in the 90s.
But he definitely latched on to that Carolina team, and he stuck with them. So I'll give him that. But they are terrible, Mario. I am sorry. No, hell no.
How do you become a Carolina fan?
It was, well, because
he watched the Giants and Steelers, but didn't really claim either one. He just liked watching defense.
Yeah, that's exactly it right there. And plus,
my cousin was quite the linebacker in his high school. In his high school heyday, my cousin was quite the linebacker at Kellenberg High School, over by Nassau Community, over by House.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So shouts out Mario Cruz, but your team really sucks. We're going to talk about somebody who's got a little more hope going on. Arthur Blank's boys. The Atlanta Falcons finished third last year at NFC South with a record of 7-10. Some highs, more lows. Key addition, quarterback Michael Penix, quarterback of the future. This is a guy that's going to be sitting behind Kirk Cousins for a little while. Rook Orohoro, Clemson.
Say that 5 times fast.
We've got Brandon Dorius out of Oregon. Our guy from Notre, J.D. Bertrand. Running back Jace McClellan out of Bama. Wide receiver Casey Washington, Illinois. Defensive line, we've got Zion Logue. Key additions via free agency, as I already alluded to, Kirk Cousins. Defensive end, James Smith-Williams. Cornerback, Kevin King. Tight end, McCole Pruitt. Cornerback, Antonio Hamilton. Defensive tackle, Eddie Goldman. Key losses. Running back, Cordarrelle Patterson to the Steelers. That's going to be fun to see him on special teams. Wide receiver, Van Jefferson, also a Steeler. Quarterback, Desmond Ridder was traded to the Cardinals to back up Kyler Murray in exchange for wide receiver, Rondell Moore.
Did you say Tyler Perry or Kyler Murray?
The same difference.
Okay.
How would Tyler Perry play in the NFL? As Medea.
Yeah, same thing. You know.
Put him on. Put Medea on Carolina. I think he's all the help they can get. I like this Atlanta team this year. I like what they did. It looks like they're going to make a concerted effort to go back to what is the strength of their roster, which should be running the rock. Mm-hmm. You've got 2 quality backs there, Tyler Algier, of course, Bijan Robinson. I think this is the kind of year where a couple of guys could really stand out with better quarterback play. I'm talking about Drake London. I'm talking about Kyle Pitts. We as NFL fans have been waiting for those two to truly arrive. I think Kirk Cousins brings that dynamic for the next couple of years where they are going to have a pretty good offense. I didn't like the Penix pick for one simple reason. I felt they needed an edge rusher, which they did not get. Zappy and I had mocked edge rushers going there.
Dallas Turner was sitting right there.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one for me to justify. I'm not saying Penix isn't going to be a good quarterback.
But if you bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins to win,
you give him all that money.
And here's the crazy part. I like Drake London. I love Bijan. Bringing in Arthur Smith was actually, I think, a great addition to that team because while he's not a great offensive-minded coach in Pittsburgh, I think his style actually fits Atlanta better.
Yeah.
They could have got Roma Dunze to team up with Drake London. They could have got Brock Bowers. But instead, you go out
that
and
would have been interesting. Bowers and Pitts together?
Yeah, that would have been awesome because
we've seen a lot of teams succeed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 2 tight end sets. You go out there with 21 personnel, like that's the formula for success nowadays. We saw the Patriots develop that with Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. But, I mean, you don't take a quarterback after spending the money you spent on $180 million on a 4-year deal, and then you go draft an older quarterback who's now 24 coming out of college. Like, no,
who is injury prone and a lefty.
And a lefty.
And a lefty. Look, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this right now. When you look at Atlanta's schedule, they cannot get off to an 0-3 start.
Whenever Zappy says, when you look at Atlanta's schedule, that's when I pop this up.
They cannot get off to an 0-3
but it's very feasible. It's very feasible.
And I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen.
But to be fair, I got them squaring off I got them at 3-3 after week 6.
Yes, I do too. But if they could somehow steal one of those 3 games, if they can defeat Pittsburgh week 1.
Week 1 is their best chance, dude.
That's their best chance. But, Kansas City could easily come in there sleeping. Kansas City's a team that we have known that they do better in December, January
Kansas City
when it
might
matters.
have to be in a coma to get beat by these guys, though.
They might still be hungover. Let's just put that out there. But, if you start off the year 0-3, the reason why you can't start off 0-3 because now you're playing the mental game with this team. And this team is predominantly young.
Mm.
I think you've got to take one of those 3 games. You have to. And Pittsburgh week 1 is the game you have to take. Philadelphia week 2, I think Philadelphia is going to be coming off a loss, and you're going into Philadelphia. I mean, that is a hard
formula. That's a tough one. That's their home opener.
Exactly. And so, but when I look at the rest of the schedule, they can bounce back. But the whole thing, while these are all NFL players, if you include the mental game in it and you're 0-3, at that point, we've seen teams not be able to recover I think it's 97% of the time. Or maybe it's 94. Either way, the odds are against you if you start 0-3. They have to take that week 1 game against Pittsburgh. They absolutely have to.
Well, that is a Sunday night or the Chief game, so you would think that the Atlanta contingent is going to be rather loud. And, it's prime time. It kind of ups the ante a little. Idris, what do you think about the way this team is constructed? I think me and Zappy both voiced our opinions, even going back to our draft shows, that we wanted them to go edge rush. They got a backup quarterback that's going to be the future quarterback. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, man. I thought they would go edge rusher or Ronald Doomsday myself. I thought they'd go receiver.
I was surprised, dude. I was.
And the draft Michael Penix, it's not to knock Penix, but you just signed Kirk Cousins to a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And
4-year, $180 million.
Right. And now you have him and you got a guy I'm assuming they're gonna sit because you can't play Kirk Cousins 5 games and sit him and put Penix in there. Because now
that certainly isn't going to happen, barring some kind of catastrophic injury.
Yeah,
if that happened, we're talking bad about ownership with Carolina.
Oh yeah.
That would top it.
I personally think the plan is to do something comparable to the whole Jordan Love 2.0 thing.
You have to, man.
And there are Packer people that are now in the Atlanta organization that I do think influence some of that decision.
Because let's say, look, like with me, I think they lose against. I think they lose their first 3 games, man. I think the Steelers being, I think Eagles will be, and I think the Chiefs will rock them. I think they start 0-3, man.
Or it could be one of those weird deals where they're 0-2, Chiefs are 2-0, and you get that weird one where the Chiefs lose a game they shouldn't lose. But no, honestly,
I think they're going to rock them, man.
I'm concerned because the Atlanta defense is not going to be as good as they could be because of that decision.
I think Kirk Cousins brings a lot to the table because the guy can see the field. He can throw the ball. I mean,
he earned my respect the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's not.
I believe in him more than I did during his Washington run or even his early Minnesota run.
I call him Dak. Now, Dak is a better quarterback. But I call him similar to Dak because during the season, I can depend on him. I really can. And with Dak, you could depend. I think Dak's a better quarterback. I'm not going to say Dak is not Dak is not Kirk Cousins. Dak is Dak. Dak is Dak. So it's none of this where they're the same quarterback. They're not the same quarterback. But I have more faith in Kirk Cousins than I had in everyone else they had.
I mean, I think he's going to elevate the play of London and Pitt, as I alluded to. I think Bijan's going to have a really good year, but
because he's that type of quarterback. He's not running the ball. He's not that type of scramble.
If you get a couple of injuries to this O-line, and if the defense underperforms or is not as good as they should be, because like I said, they made some choices that didn't address the best parts of the defense.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to be okay, but I don't think this is a playoff team. Not this year. I got the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to give them 8 wins. I got them going 8-9, missing the playoffs. Yeah. I was torn on a repeat of 7-10 because me, you, and Zappy all believe they're going to start off 7-10. 7-10 for the Falcons.
I'm going 8-9. Like I said, I think they're going to start 0-3. And looking at their schedule, they got the Saints and the Bucks and the Panthers and the Seahawks. than the Buccaneers again.
It's not enviable. And even like the games against teams that are like middle 50-50 matchups.
Right.
I don't give a shit what year it is. You go to Denver, what is that, week 11? That's not a gimme. You got the Raiders in Vegas late in the year. Monday Night Football. The Raiders play good on Monday nights historically. You got the Vikings late in the year. By then, J.J. McCarthy should be in there and doing his thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not an easy schedule. I'm going to stick to
tail end. I think the tail end.
It weakens.
Last 7-8 games. Yeah, I think that
the at Vikings will be interesting. At Vikings, you gotta put your money on Kirk in that one
because you're going to Minnesota.
7. I'll go back to 8-9. I'm keep flip flopping. 8-9 final decision.
I'm gonna go 8-9. I think they start 0-3 though.
But I don't have this team making the playoffs.
Nah,
because of that bad September.
Oh man, I'm gonna one up you guys. First of all, I'm gonna say this: the division is gonna finish with a 2-way tie.
I agree.
I think this team is a 9-8 team with the opportunity to make the playoffs. You look at the fact that if you start off 0-3, the one good thing is 2 of those losses are to AFC teams.
Right.
That's the positive to take out of an 0-3 start.
Right.
But when I look at the rest of the schedule, this is a team that I see 9-8, possibly 10-7.
I could see
and
that.
The only reason why I say possibly is because you do have a very strong backfield. You do have Tyler Algier and you do have Bijan Robinson.
They've got to commit to it.
They have to commit to it. But you bring in Arthur Smith to commit to it, and you bring in Kirk Cousins to be this is a team that they're going to run to establish the pass, not pass to establish a run. And they're scheduled. I mean, after the first 3 weeks, it's actually not bad.
Right.
I'm going 9-8. I think they're going to be tied with another team in this division. I think it's pretty obvious because I already said which 2 teams are going to be top 5 teams in this division. But I really think this team could be 9-8, possibly 10-7. The only reason why I say 9-8, 10-7 is because it comes down to that one game on December 8th in Minnesota. And right now, I think we all know that December 8th for the Minnesota Vikings, it's going to be J.J. McCarthy starting that game. And after watching him in preseason yesterday, he looks like the real deal. He looked like the best quarterback out of all the quarterbacks out of this rookie class. And
you know why, Kathy? He's in the right position.
He's in the perfect position.
He's in the right position.
And he's doing this without Jordan Addison, too. And he's doing it without Jetta. He's doing this without Hawkinson. Like that's why I look at this Vikings game. That's the game. That's the catch game that I look at. If they win that game, they will be 10-7. They win the division. If they lose that game, they'll be 9-8. And I think the other team we're going to talk about soon will have 9-8 record as well, but they will have a better conference record to get them into the playoffs.
I can 9-8. I can see 9-8. To be honest with you, I think I said after the first 3 weeks, I think the next toughest game is Dallas, and then after that, it basically, you got the Seahawks. I mean, you got Seahawks in it, but you got Dallas, which Dallas.
It's at home. That's the one benefit for them.
I got these guys.
I go 9 games,
3-3 in their division.
Yeah,
I got them splitting with the Saints, getting swept by the Bucks, but sweeping the Carolina Panthers. I think everybody in this division sweeps the Panthers more than likely.
And that's funny because
to the Bucks is going to be the reason why they don't win this division.
And I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. That I think the Bucks can sweep them, but the Saints, I think they can sweep the Saints. The one thing we know, I don't know what it is about it, but the Saints Buccaneers rivalry, for some odd reason, the Saints play the Bucks very, very, very well year in and year out. But the New Orleans, Atlanta. That's
going back to the Brady era. The one true loss was the one that they absolutely needed. Which was, Breeze and Brady's final matchup there. New Orleans Saints. Now that they're on the brain, they did finish second in this division, but they did have a 9-0 victory late last year in Tampa. But unfortunately, they didn't. Too little, too late. Kool-Aid McKinstry, huge pickup, if you ask me, Alabama. But this is a caveat that I think is going to happen as soon as probably Halloween. I think quarterback Spencer Rattler is coming for Carr's job. Wide receiver Bub Means out of Pittsburgh. Jalen Ford out of Texas. Christian Boyd. This team did make a concerted effort to replenish their defense. They even picked up another guy that many would consider a draft bust, Chase Young. My legitimate concern with this Saints team, in addition to Derek Carr, is that I am not convinced that this offensive line is going to hold up in this very physical division or just in general. Alvin Kamara definitely has lost some steps. I like their receiving room. Chris Olave is awesome. And I also have a high opinion of Shaheed. But when I look at this Derek Carr situation, I think he's holding on to a thread to his job. The numbers, to me, don't really look as good as they look, so to speak. I think Spencer Rattler is a good pick. And I think he's coming for that job. I think he's going to take that job. But I think there's going to be some trial and error while this whole thing happens. I got the Saints going 7-10 this year. They're not going to be terrible, but they're not going to be that good either. 6-11 or 7-10. I'm on 6-11 for the Saints. 6-11 for the Saints.
That's when I look at the Saints, and this is the first thing that comes to mind for 2024. Ryan Ramchick is already out for the season before the season even started.
That's a horrible start.
That's not the way to start it.
Their first game.
Yeah, their first game. They're gonna host the Panthers. That, you're supposed to build off of that.
Yeah,
we're gonna beat the Panthers, whether it's 24-12. Yeah, but after that, Dallas, Philly, Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa Bay.
Right.
It gets no easy for.
Okay, so basically in October they'll be 1-4.
Exactly, and then can you bounce back after that? Again, I alluded to the mental game with the Atlanta Falcons going 0-3. I'm looking at the mental game with the Saints team going 1-4.
I'm gonna regress. I'm gonna retread. I'm going 5-12 now that I'm looking at the schedule.
There you go. I have a 4-13 New Orleans Saints team. That's what I have. I have a 4-13 New Orleans Saints.
They have not been right since Drew Brees left. It's not just Drew Brees, but they haven't been right since Drew Brees.
They haven't been right. And you have to also remember, Mike Thomas, he's gone.
Yeah.
Well, we understand the why, but he's gone. This team does not exactly say, hey, we have the players that can do it. Are we talking about Alvin Kamara in 2024, or are we talking about Alvin Kamara in 2019? He's not the same running back. Chris Olave, great receiver, but when you're the focal point of your offense, they're going to roll the safety over.
And I'll be honest, I like Olave, but I think in more potent offenses, he's not a number one.
No, he's not. And I think that's what the verdict has been about him, is that a good receiver, great receiver out of Ohio State, who has become one of the receiver used. But I think their offensive line is going to be in trouble. And I look at Derek Carr as one of the worst starting quarterbacks going into this season. That's just how it is, And Spencer Rattler, he looked great. Let me take that back. He looked good in his first preseason start, first NFL start. But this team, I think there's too many question marks, which is crazy because I look at a guy like Cam Jordan, who has been a great defensive player for the last 10 plus years, where would he be trade bait? I say yes. Does he want to be on a 4-13, 5-12, 6-11 type team? A team that's clearly rebuilding? I think this is a team that's going to be in the running for the top 5 pick. And if Spencer Rattler is not starting by week 8, that means they clearly do not have their quarterback of the future, and that means that they're going to be in the Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders running.
Looking at the schedule, they'll beat Carolina. Then you go to Dallas. Dallas is going to throttle them. The Eagles may win. They probably win. They got the Falcons. They go to KC. You know what KC does in KC. They play at I keep wanting to call them San Diego. They play at the Chargers. They play the Browns. They play the Rams. They go to New York, play the Giants. They play the Commanders, which is not going to be a pushover this year.
Nope.
They go to Green Bay.
I got them getting swept by the NFC East. Let me just get that out of the way right now.
I want to give them 5 games, but just those games right there, I don't see them winning any of those games.
The only reason I think I'm comfortable giving them 5 is because 2 of them are against Carolina.
Yeah.
And, Idris, what you said, I think there's 2 teams in this division that are going to get swept by the NFC East, the Saints and the Panthers.
I agree.
That's reasonable. Yeah,
I agree.
That's reasonable.
Dallas and the Saints usually play some great games, but Drew Brees is not there anymore.
Yeah, their offense hasn't been right. And if we're really being honest, Brees' final year in 2020, their defense had figured out Tom Brady for the most part.
Yeah.
But Brees, I'll be honest, he was already pretty much finished and cooked at that point.
Yeah.
And it came to fruition in that playoff game.
I'm going to go 5 games, 5 and 12. I kind of go down to 4, but I think they'll get 5. I just don't see at the tail end of their schedule.
I got them splitting with Atlanta. That's one of those games Atlanta needs to win that won't. Like, they should sweep them, but they won't sweep them. And that's part of my theory as to why Atlanta will be at 8-9 and not 9-8.
And that's why I have Atlanta sweeping them, and that's why I have them 4-13. So I think we all agree that it's Atlanta that will make the difference between 4-13, 5-12.
Because with the Saints team. Because in the end, you go to the Chargers, you play Cleveland, you play the Rams, you go to New York, you go to
Green Bay in Week 16. I don't envy them.
Say that one more time.
At Green Bay, Week 16.
Week 16. That must be. What happens in Wisconsin Week 16, late December? What is that thing? That teams in the South don't usually do really well in. Is it like cold or snow possibly? It's leading up to Christmas weekend or
2
Christmas Day, should I say?
And it's a Monday night game.
Yeah, no, Monday night game. No, that is going to be the game that they just say, hey, Spencer, you want to start this one? Because if I'm Derek Carr,
get in there, rookie.
I mean, shoot, Derek Carr got injured last year in Green Bay, and they blew an 18-point lead.
Yeah. They did the same thing against the Raiders. Blew a 17-point lead.
Yeah, no. I think we're all in agreement. We're all in agreement, I think, with this Saints team. I think we all have the same losses, but it comes down to the Atlanta series. I have Atlanta actually sweeping them this year. You guys have them splitting. But all in all, we're agreeing on the same exact New Orleans Saints team that they're just going to be a bad NFL team. They're a very bad team.
I started thinking about 7 wins, and then I quickly gave them 2 more losses. 5-12.
Too many tough defenses down the stretch, man.
Yeah, and their offense just has too many question marks as well. Not to mention that their receiving room over the last few years has had issues staying healthy. Not to mention Kamara's got too many miles right now.
Yeah, he is nothing like he used to be.
Yeah, the defending 3 in a row champions of this division, Buccaneers, 9-8 last year.
Yeah, again.
Very convincing victory over the Philadelphia Eagles, and damn near beat the Lions in Detroit. That was a good game.
Hey, whoa, hold on. You said what again? Because it's crazy.
Defending
I wouldn't be
3-time champions consecutively.
Right.
And Tom Brady was a starting quarterback last year too, right?
Because
when I think of the 3-time defending division champs, I'm thinking Tom Brady's the quarterback, right?
But this is the interesting caveat to that. They did not win the division title with Tom Brady the year that they won the Super Bowl.
No,
I know.
That's crazy, ain't it?
But then they win a Super Bowl 2020, and they are looking for 4 straight division titles, and which would be 5 straight playoff appearances, so that is rather interesting. But the Buccaneers, in my opinion, what I like about they kind of did a pivot. They were very close to trading Mike Evans this offseason. They were able to make a deal with him. They franchised safety Antoine Winfield. You look at the defense. They're keeping important players. They gave Baker Mayfield a raise. You got Levante David come back. Brock's product, Chase Edmonds, gives some depth to that running back room. And no, he will not be the starter, but he is not a bad piece. So when I consider that for the most part, this team is keeping a decent amount of their core.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, man. I'm not trying to insult everybody here. If they go 7-10 and sweep the Falcons, they're going to win this division.
Yeah.
Yes, that
8-9.
You could say that
the magic number.
They could go 7-10 and still win this division because that's how this is going to be the worst division in football.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And that statement you just made is actually a statement that most people will not argue. A 7-10 team might win this division.
Something that I'm taking a vested interest in because of my loyalty to him as a player. Mm-hmm. I am really rooting for Sterling Shepard to make this roster.
Me too.
It would be cool to see him work with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Mm-hmm. I think that he still has a little bit to offer if healthy. I would love to see him contribute and do well for them.
But you know he's going to retire a Giant, right?
Absolutely. now you've got fourth on all-time receiving with us. Now you got the schedule here. Week 1 at the Commanders. I'll be honest, that's a toss-up. At the Lions, this is a potential.
Week 1's a home game.
It's a home game.
You got the Lions. You got the Broncos. This is a potential 1-3 start. 1-4 if they don't get off to a good start. They have the same risk for a slow start that the Atlanta Falcons do. The difference is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a defense that the Atlanta Falcons do not possess, and they will figure out to not get buried early. They might be 2-4 maybe. They're not going to get buried to the point where they can't recover down the stretch. And, week 16 and week 15 going to be 2 big ones.
And, the one crazy thing I will say about Atlanta is we say they don't have the defense. They actually had a good defense. They needed pass rushers last year. And I think they were top 15 defensively.
They were right around
the middle. Bad. Right around they were right in the middle. But, Richie, you said it best. And what makes Atlanta in the position to win this division is the simple fact that, like you said, the Bucs also have such a horrific start that I think week 1, they lose that game to Washington at home because we don't have any film on Jaden Daniels. No, that's the game where I expect Washington to show up and be like, "Hey, we're here." It
could be a game that they surprise people, and then you go to Detroit.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I already told you guys that's my Super Bowl pick in the NFC.
They'll beat the Broncos. Week 4 versus. Now this is interesting. I can see them beating Philly in week 4. It's still going to be kind of hot. That's not ideal for Philly that early in the year.
I don't see them beating Philly for one reason and one reason only. We saw what happened in the wild card game.
That's going to be on the brain.
That's going to be on the brain. Nick Sirianni is coaching for his job. That's a game you have to win. If they go into Tampa and lose that game, it's very possible that, Idris and I picked Dallas to win the division. You picked Philly to win the division. It's possible that Philly is firing Nick Sirianni by week 8 if they lose that game in Tampa.
Possible.
So I will throw that little side note in there. But I don't think Philly is going to go into Tampa 2 consecutive times in a row in a span of 9 months, 8 months, and lose. I don't see it because when you look at the rosters, Philly is a much better roster. And this time they at least have a competent offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. So that's where I have them losing. But if they lose that week 1 game against Washington, and if they somehow blow a game against Denver, then they might be a 6-11 team.
But this is the weird caveat to the Buccaneers. While Baker Mayfield is a cool story last year, and you look at the trading card, pretty good year. He did have some random stinkers. Like that 9-0 loss at home to the Saints was pretty damn bad.
Yeah.
There were a few others where you're just like, what Buccaneer team is going to show up? And then it puts in perspective how average their season was. Yes, they gave us an entertaining divisional round matchup in Detroit. But when the guys are hugging it out and when the Detroit Lions are advancing to the NFC title game, you see Tampa catching their 9th loss. And I'm like, is this a first? I'm thinking about this for a moment. I'm like, a divisional loss is your 9th loss of the season? And then I said, oh, no, it's not a first. The Seattle Seahawks actually won a playoff game and went into the game with 9 losses. So, no, it's not a first, but it's a very rare thing. You're going to get that weird stuff with the 17-game slate, too, especially when you have weak divisions now. But having said that, the Bucs are the best team out of 2.5 bowls of shit.
Yeah.
Because the Carolina Panthers suck. The New Orleans Saints are bad. They're not like completely pathetic, but they're bad.
Mhm.
And the Atlanta Falcons, while they might have a few pieces, I still don't think they're better than the Bucks. Bucks win this division again. I'm going to give them an identical record to last year. I got the Bucks winning this division at 9-8.
I agree. And so what's different between the Bucks and the other teams? You know, their gauntlet is at the end too. They go to KC, they go to the Giants.
I think what saves their ass is after likely getting beaten Dallas.
Yeah,
those are two very winnable games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But do we have a repeat? No, we don't.
I'm going 9-8 because
the Saints have historically played them good.
I'm going 9-8 because I think with Mike Evans coming back, that team. I think I'm just going 9-8.
It meant something for him to finish his career. Rachaad White is a guy that I am very high on.
Yeah.
I honestly I like their roster the most out of everybody here.
Mm-hmm.
That is my bottom line in this division.
But they got to sneak a game, man. Like they got like a game like the Eagles. They got to sneak a win in somewhere. They got to beat one of these top teams.
The game to sneak.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are going to slap me.
No, I'm not.
Why I'm going to say this.
I'm looking at it too.
In my opinion, it's the San Francisco 49ers. We saw what happened to San Francisco going to Minnesota last year, and Minnesota winning that game.
They kind of have like that mid-season slumber.
Yeah, and Baltimore is the other one. Baltimore is supposed to be good, you know, especially bringing Derrick Henry. We still don't know if this Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry 1-2 punch is going to work. We have to see it first. But those are the two games where I think they can slip away. Look, I said 9-8. Atlanta would be 9-8 or 10-7, being the game against Minnesota that would determine what their record is. If they lose that game, they're 9-8, tied with the Buccaneers, but the Buccaneers win the division. I have the Buccaneers 9-8. I really do. When I look at the schedule, I could see them getting off to a really bad start, horrific start, winning one game in their first 5-6 weeks. But then after that, it does tend to get off a little bit, and where they can, and then when you look at what they have to finish against, I mean, New Orleans, Carolina, at Dallas, okay, that's one thing. But then the Chargers, the Raiders, the Panthers, this is a team that could very well get hot late. And, you know, in the NFL, it's all about momentum. If they can get hot late and get that number 4 seed, as crazy as it sounds, yeah. But again, we also said that 7-10 might win this division. They could easily go 7-10 when you look at their schedule.
I see a first-round matchup. I'm going to say whoever finishes second in the NFC North has a first-round matchup in Tampa, Florida.
So whoever finishes second in the NFC North has a date with the winner of the NFC West or NFC East in the division title. Got it.
Yeah, I like Tampa to win this division, and I feel that they'll play the number 1 wild card. And in my genuine opinion, I think the number 1 wild card will be coming out of the NFC North, either Detroit or Green Bay. I consider both of them Super Bowl contenders going in. I have strong feelings on which one of those teams is going to make their push, but that's why I'm not going to give my opinion just yet, because you got to tune in to the NFC North preview for that. I'll give a small little hint. After being gutted the way the Detroit Lions were last year, and after seeing your coach refuse to force the 49ers to have to play perfect ball and kind of gift them opportunities, that's the kind of shit that gets motherfuckers fired. Now, I get it. That's his style and all. But there ain't nothing stylistic about not taking points when you need them in a playoff game. I don't give a shit who you are and what your rep is.
When you need them, you got to take them.
So just kind of flipping it over a little, I'm just going to say one thing. There's this guy that coaches those guys in Wisconsin that has a career record to start with the Packers that is comparable to the great Vince Lombardi, Curly Lambeau, and Mike Holmgren. Just putting it out there. So I'm going to kind of tip my hand a little bit on who I think is going to win that particular division.
Oh, you're talking about Mike McCarthy? That's cool, man. Thank you.
No, I ain't talking about that guy. However, Mike McCarthy has had his moments.
Yeah.
No, definitely. No, it's I think Detroit, Green Bay, I think they're going to be great teams. This Tampa team, look, the one thing that works in their favor is the simple fact that while they do start off bad in almost murderer's row of a schedule, especially after San Francisco week 10, it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not, and you know, I've already voiced my opinion about what I think the Giants are going to be this year. I just voiced what I think the Carolina Panthers are going to be this year. Vegas, you know, hey, to be seen. Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert being hurt early is not a good thing. Carolina and Saints at Dallas, that's probably going to be a loss. The Bucks can easily, if they win this division 9-8, 8-9, 7-10, 10-7, whatever the case may be, they are going to be taking momentum into the playoffs. And we already know momentum going into January is very, very important.
You know something? Speaking on the Chargers, and I know it's off the record or off the subject, that season may not be as good as we think because plantar fasciitis is no joke, especially for a quarterback who likes to move around.
Very painful. Not to mention that you're changing the whole culture there. That's going to take some time.
Eli was able to get through the season because Eli was a pocket passer, drop back, maybe a few steps, throw the ball. He didn't run around, so he made it through the season with it. Had a good season, 9-7 at that. But with Herbert, him being so tall, he moves around and
very mobile.
Yeah, it's gonna be painful.
Yeah, it's not good. And last year he had that lingering rib issue. Then he hurt his knee.
He's gonna have to do what Dak Prescott did.
Yeah,
he's going to have to turn it. He's going to have to turn into a pocket passer.
We
saw Dak Prescott turn in. I mean, Dak Prescott was a running quarterback that could throw the ball, or he was a quarterback that could throw the ball and ran too.
Yeah,
and we saw the horrific injury against the Giants, and he turned into a pocket passer, and it's going to get him paid. He's going to have to do the exact same thing. He has to turn into a pocket passer. If not, Justin Herbert's career will be what RG3 or RG2's career was: short and not so sweet.
Not to mention what you worry about with what we saw with an Andrew Luck. But this is the weird thing with this division before we get out of here, in my opinion. We all seem to agree that Tampa is the best out of this worst division. But 7-10 is still not out of the question because, I mean, Zappy made a good point. Right. Oh, you can catch the Niners sleeping. But Tampa could be on that mediocre tip where they can win a good game like that, and then coming off a bye week, get a little lazy and lose one in East Rutherford.
Cancel that. San Francisco 49ers, week 9 is a bye week. They're going to get demolished.
I feel the same way.
I thought 49ers were coming off of the game, a very emotional game against Dallas. That Dallas game is week 8, week 9 they have a bye. Then week 10 they go to Tampa. Niners are going to win that game. So never mind. That won't be the game.
All right, we're going to revisit this when that gets closer.
I agree.
You want to get out before we get out of here?
When it comes to this division, look, Arthur Smith, do the right thing and use Bijan Robinson, why he was picked at number 7 in the NFL draft. Let him be that running back. Let him be that Adrian Peterson style of running back. Feed him the damn ball. He's going into year 2. He's not going into year 8 or 9. He's going into year 2. Give him the ball and focus your offense around him. Allow players like Drake London and Kyle Pitts to where the safeties have to come into the box and let them win those one-on-one matchups. Because when I look at this Atlanta team, I was high on them last year. This year, if I'm Kirk Cousins, I'm saying, hey, give him the ball, make my job easier. So I will say this.
I'm going on record right now. Rachaad White is going to lead this division in rushing yards, not Bijan Robinson.
Ooh. I think with Bijan, I agree. Give him the ball, and you got Algier right behind him. So it's not like you running.
Algier's a starter on most rosters.
Yes, that's what I mean. So
similar to a David Montgomery, what he brings to the table, or even what Zach Charbonnet could be down the road.
Yeah, you give Bijan the ball. That's what you drafted him so high for. Give him the ball. You got another guy who's gonna come right off the bench and pick up the slack whenever Bijan's on the bench, catching the breather. And with Kirk Cousins, I mean, run him like they ran Dalvin Cook in Minnesota. Give him the ball. Kirk Cousins is going to drop back. He's not running. He's going to drop back and throw the ball.
I think we know what they should do, but I have this strong opinion, not just here, but basically in the game of life.
Because
Water seems to
the OC is there.
Water seems to seep to its level. And when I think about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, now this is another weird caveat. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the worst winning percentage in the history of the NFL, and that's including the Brady era. Having said all that, I still like them. Yeah, go figure. I still like them to pull this thing out. I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do I really want to give them a winning record? For now, I do. 9-8, Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
9-8, but second in the division.
Can this Buccaneer team, in any way, shape, or form, if their defense plays like we've seen them in previous playoffs, surprise the NFL world and go on a legitimate run in the NFC?
Yes, and I'm going to tell you why they can. For one big reason only. You brought back Levante David. Kalijah Kancey is going into year 2. You still have Vita Vea. Mm-hmm. You have a front that should be able to wreak havoc. Mm-hmm. That's going to allow guys to get free in the hole. Linebackers. Mm-hmm. They have a good, pretty good secondary. Mm-hmm. If their defense shows up, then this Bucs team will make noise. And that's the reason why. So I'm going to say that because Kalijah Kancey, year 2, Vita Vea, an all-pro defensive tackle, nose tackle, and you still have your stud of a linebacker, Levante David, back. I'm going to go with that reason. Oh,
defense wins championships and defense wins division titles and such. They are, like I said, it's simple. They are the most complete out of an incomplete division. The Atlanta Falcons, if they do what you and Idris said, then yeah, maybe it's time for a new division champ. I am just not convinced that that's going to happen. I need to see it before I could speak on it. I still got the Bucs. For Mr. Zappi and for Mr. Salam, I am Richie. Thank you so much for hanging with us tonight, watching the show. Our next preview, announcements to come, we might be doing a little detour in terms of regional order. August 17th is my father's birthday. August 21st is my father's death date. He was a diehard Green Bay Packer fan. So somewhere in between those two dates, we're going to be rolling out the NFC North, excuse me. But we're going to see if we get the South done before that. Jordan Patrick, if you're watching, we want you on the show for the AFC South. For the guys.
I'm going to like my division pick for that one, so I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah, I kind of hinted to him at work, so we'll see if he actually remembers that conversation. But if not, maybe we'll have him here on the show. For Idris and for Mike, I am Richie. Please like and subscribe to the channel, Richie X Jr. Sports Podcast on YouTube, and have a great beginning of the new work week. Take care, everyone.